Hello everyone and welcome back. It's SEC FANatic. I'm your host, Matthew Johnson. I'm really excited for the show this week. Thank you all for your support for last week's show. It was really a hit, and thank you again to Isaac Stackhouse for coming on. We have a great couple of guests lined up for you all within the next few weeks, and so I'm really excited for that. I would like to start off, though, by making an apology. For those of you who listen through maybe a TV or just your phone speakers or a computer, you may not pick this up, but for those of you who listen through headphones, you may have realized that the sound of people talking only comes out of your left ear, and that is just due to something that happened in the editing program that I unfortunately did not catch until this last episode, and but the problem is fixed, so if you're hearing this now, you should be able to hear me out of both ears this time, and it should sound a lot better, more natural. But my apologies with that. But moving on now, I was planning to do a quick wrap-up of the College World Series this week, but unfortunately, seeing as how weather delays got to it, I wasn't able to cover it by the time of filming/recording this podcast, so I'm really sorry about that, guys, but of course, some great places to go and look for the updates on it. SECsports.com is a really good place, and then of course, ESPN, great places, and then of course, you can always just Google it to go look up information about the College World Series if that interests you. Okay, so moving on from that, I'm going to start off by announcing this new segment. Of course, every week I tend to do a Player of the Week, but now sports in the SEC, we're kind of in that transition place from your spring/summer sports moving into our fall sports. So there's not a lot of activity. So to go in and find a Player of the Week is going to be kind of hard. So what I'm going to do is kick off the first ever annual SEC FANatic Player of the Year. You all are the ones who get to vote, and you get to write in those votes. The link will be in the description of this video, and voting will close on July 30th. And of course, that is from any other. That's from any sport. You just go and write in your player's name. It's real quick and easy. So hopefully that's something you can all enjoy. Okay, so today our interviewee is going to be with life coach and former pro baseball player Tim Pahuta. But first, we're going to do preseason preliminary, which is the segment where we take a look at two SEC teams leading up to the football season. Today, the two teams that we're going to be taking a look at are Texas A&M and Florida. Texas A&M in 2017, they went 7-6, 4-4 in the SEC. A couple of their issues were just their team lacked a lot of consistency to be able to do great things. You know, they did some great things here, they did some great things here, but at other times they did not do such great things. As far as 2018, another issue that they had was they had a lot of young athletes, and young athletes that were still gelling and who hadn't exactly maybe gotten the rhythm of everything. But as far as 2018 hopes, you have a new head coach, Jimbo Fisher. This is his 9th year of coaching football. It's his first year coaching college, not at Florida State. So this is his first step away from Florida State into the SEC at Texas A&M. And so we'll see how he does. He went 83-23 at Florida State. So he had a winning record there. But how he can transition from there to Texas A&M remains to be seen. We'll see it up in this upcoming football season. Texas A&M really benefits in the area of players lost and players coming back. They only really lost Christian Kirk, their big play wide receiver. That's really their only big hit. And then they only lost 2 of their top 10 defenders. And so Texas A&M is looking really, really good heading into the 2018 season as far as veterans and experience and players returning. They returned back Nick Starkel and Kellen Mond, their quarterbacks. They returned back Travion Williams, their starting running back. They returned back all 5 starters on the offensive line. So with their new coach and a huge amount of returning starters, I mean, this Texas A&M team is looking really good. And I personally definitely have to ride this train of this dark horse SEC team that everyone's hyping Texas A&M up to be, because when you just do a little bit of digging, you realize how experienced they really are. As far as 2018 season predictions, the one that I am going to be doing is a site called Gig'em Gazette. Yes, Gig'emGazette.com. 2018, their season predictions are for them to go 9-3 with wins over Northwestern State, ULM, Kentucky, UAB, Clemson. Now, this Clemson is an interesting reason why they chose him to win, because it's going to be a Jimbo Fisher who is very, very used to playing Clemson, who now has a really, really athletic team. This is going to be a game that Jimbo and the Texas A&M guys are really going to want, and so they picked Texas A&M to be able to win this one. And then also Arkansas, South Carolina, Auburn, and LSU, with losses to Alabama, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. Okay, so moving on to Florida, they went 4-7 last year, 3-5 in the SEC. Their 2017 issues were like a lot of other people. They had a lot of off-the-field issues like a lot of other poor teams have had, and then their offense still hasn't been rebuilt. That's kind of why Jim McElwain came into Florida hoping to take a very poor offense and make them great. However, it really more so became still a defensive team. They still stayed with that defensive Florida identity that they've had for about the past decade. And so now what they're going to have to try to do is you get head coach Dan Mullen this year, and they're going to have to try to look to rebuild that offense to be able to have more success. And again, as far as 2018 hopes, 10 of 11 starters are coming back on offense, 7 of 11 on defense. And then, of course, you have Dan Mullen. This is going to be his 10th year of coaching. He had 9 years at Mississippi State. He went 69-46 there. And he's reported as to saying that he just wants football to be fun again for these players. He feels like, it's been so much, there's been a lot of problems there, and he just wants the fact that they're coming out here and playing. He just wants everything to be fun for these guys again. So yeah, you have this historic defense and experience coming back on offense. You have 10 of those 11 starters. That helps a team that wants to rebuild that offense. And of course, their defense has always been historically good, and there seems to not be any change happening there. The prediction that I'm going to be using for them is from SG1sports.com. And they predict them to go 8-4 with wins over Charleston Southern, Kentucky, Colorado State, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Missouri, South Carolina, and Idaho, with losses to Mississippi State, LSU, Georgia, and Florida State. Do you agree or disagree? Let us know down in the comments areas. The comments, let us know. And good luck to these two teams. All right, so an interview that I'm really excited for. We're talking pro baseball and life mapping with Coach Tim Pahuta. Pahuta. That's how you pronounce it. All right, so let's send it on over. So, again, we're here with Tim Pahuta, former baseball player and life mapping coach.
Happy to be here.
So, how did you get started in baseball?
I would say in the very, very beginning, I definitely got started as a result of my father's relationship with baseball.
Yeah.
He's a huge baseball fan. He actually still plays to this day. He's in his early 60s, and he plays in an over 30 baseball league, which I think is crazy, but he still does it. He loves it. So when I was a kid, we definitely bonded over baseball, and that is what we spent our time doing together. He'd throw batting practice, and I would hit balls.
What do you enjoy most about playing?
Looking back at that memory of how I got started and why, I think that explains really, really what I enjoyed and what I still miss to this day about baseball is that connection. It's connection with a big group of guys, and I mean there's ladies around too a lot of the times too, trainers and so forth. But we would travel around the country together via bus, and we'd be together for 6 months daily. And that's just, you form a bond in that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
That's just, I haven't found that outside of baseball just because it's so much time together over the course of that 6 months. And I'm sure it's that way in most sports, and most athletes will tell you the same thing. It's like, yeah, it's my family, right? Yeah, and I did it for 9 years, so I have 9 different baseball families and they're all, I mean, eight of those 9 years were with the Nationals. So the Washington Nationals are largely like my baseball family.
Yeah.
And it's spread out. I mean, so many guys that played for the Nationals that now play for other teams. I can hardly turn on a game without knowing somebody on either team.
What led to the end of playing baseball for you?
Well, it was a combination of a few different things. I was definitely getting older, and after my last year with the Nationals, which was in 2012, my agent was having a hard time finding another job for me, essentially in affiliated baseball.
Okay.
And I had a couple of different options in independent ball, and I ended up choosing this league out in South Dakota. Well, it's not, the whole league's not out there, but the team that I chose is out there, called the Sioux Falls Canaries.
Yeah.
And so I retired as a Sioux Falls Canary. I signed a 2-year contract in that league, kind of again, I didn't really want to, but apparently that's like a league standard or a league necessity. And I had a kind of a verbal agreement ahead of time that I would be able to leave that second year of the contract and go elsewhere if I wanted to, and it didn't really work out quite that way. I had a pretty good year, and I had some value as a player, and rather than let me go, so I had set up another job elsewhere, another baseball gig closer to home in New Jersey.
Yeah.
For the following season, and rather than release me and let me go on and play in that for that team, my manager traded my contract to a team that I wasn't really interested in playing for, and at that point my knees were kind of shot, and I felt like my window to making it to the big leagues was essentially closed, and just felt like time. And I think every athlete hits that time, and it's just, for me, it was 30 years old. And I think I was lucky to make it till 30 years old, to tell you the truth, looking back on it, because most people don't get that opportunity.
So, kind of switching gears here to your life, the life mapping part of what you do. What exactly is life mapping?
Yeah, absolutely. I discovered life mapping about, I guess it was 8 months ago now. My coach, who's named Jim Brown, is the creator of life mapping, and he came up with this whole concept. He's a master of neurolinguistic programming, so that's what this whole program is pretty much built on, NLP, which is essentially, just to simplify for your listeners, if they don't know, it's just the way our language that we use with ourselves and with others affects our thoughts, and ultimately our thoughts affect our reality. So it's the words that we're choosing in our day-to-day lives to interact with the world and ourselves is affecting our lives. What life mapping is all about is visualization and a combination of evaluating that language, right? So when I was playing baseball, I think one of the things that I did often is visualize what was going to happen. And I wasn't necessarily using even the words like visualization, or even thinking about that as a concept. But I'd be standing in the on-deck circle, and I'd be watching the pitcher, pitch to the hitter that's ahead of me. And I would be thinking about my at-bat while I'm watching his at-bat and visualizing the way that I think this pitcher is going to approach like my at-bat and what the situation is in the game, who's on base, like all of that affects that, right? So while I'm sitting on deck or while I'm in the field, the same situation, we're imagining or visualizing what could happen so that when it happens in like a split second, because the ball's coming 100 miles an hour, you pretty much just have to react.
Yeah.
There's a lot of time to think in baseball, but when the game's happening, you really don't have time. So you kind of have to visualize and like plan ahead of time. If I get a ground ball to my left and I'm playing third base and this base is loaded, am I throwing it to second base? Am I throwing it at home? What's the score? Who's on deck? Who's up? Like, who's running to first? Can we turn double play? Like, all of these things are like in your head and they're happening a million miles an hour. And if you don't do that like legwork ahead of the play actually happening, like thinking about it, you'll get that ground ball and you'll catch it and you'll go, what do I do?
Yeah.
And I mean, that skill of visualization is, I have found over the last 2 or 3 years heading into this like personal development and like self-growth world, which is kind of where I'm in now as a coach, realizing that taking that skill of like visualization on a small scale or in a game like baseball and then taking it to life as in, so what type of future do I really want to have, or what type of person do I really want to be, and what type of person am I living into being, takes visualization, because unless I have a clear vision of who that person is or what that future is, I find myself really not moving because I'm not headed in the direction of anything compelling. But if I've built this compelling image of what the best Tim looks like and what my best future looks like, or the future that I want to live looks like, and I have a very clear image of what that is in my head, it's easier for me. It's actually very easy for me to get up in the morning and just head in that direction because I know exactly where I'm going. I know exactly why I'm going that direction. It's because I have taken the time to like sit with myself and get clear on what's important to me, and it's not like a decision by committee kind of thing where I'm asking a bunch of people, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? And then kind of putting that all together and then living my life based on what I think a bunch of people think I should be doing. That's the quickest way to be inauthentic, because you're being exactly what you think other people think you should be. And I think when I left baseball, I didn't really know who I was. I was 30 years old, and without baseball, I was Tim Pahuta, I was a baseball player, and then I was doing something else. You know what I mean? Was pretty much my entire life. When that baseball player piece was gone and I was just Tim Pahuta and I really didn't know, that was it. It was like, well, who am I then? Because, that wasn't going to last forever, and I just didn't really think, I guess I didn't really think about it. Obviously, people talk about it. I did go to college and get a degree, so I guess on some level I had I knew that it wasn't going to last forever. But I also think when I was playing, in the back of my head, I had in my mind that the guys that do make it, they don't have a backup plan. Like, this is it. They go 100% for baseball, and then they make it. So I didn't necessarily plan that much for after baseball. I was lucky enough to land a sales job after baseball, and I started making decisions really largely based on money.
Yeah.
And I had been working in that as a lighting regional sales manager for 2.5 years. Okay. And I had moved from New Jersey out to Los Angeles, and I was traveling around the western third of the U.S. I traded in buses for planes, which is great. And I got myself a corporate credit card or expense account, which is nice. So I was traveling around the western third of the U.S., and I don't know if it was tired of traveling or I wasn't really finding a lot of meaning in what I was doing other than, making money for myself, and which is, looking back on it, it's exactly what I wanted it to be. I never made a lot of money playing baseball, even though I did it for so long. So I left baseball at 30 years old, and I really had this mentality of scarcity and just, like, I didn't want to be, like, doing something I love and super passionate about and, like, grinding away to make, like, next to no money, and that being okay because I loved it. And there was obviously a light at the end of that minor league tunnel of the big leagues that's, like, always out there somewhere, and you can never really tell how close it is, but it's always out there. So I left baseball with this mentality of scarcity, and I started really making decisions based on money. And there's good that was coming out of what I was doing. I was traveling around. I was meeting a lot of people, seeing a bunch of cities I've never seen. We were providing, like, LED lighting solutions to older technologies that's, saving energy costs and things for big companies and commercial buildings. So, and we're providing, Italian design, nice lighting fixtures for a decent cost. So we were providing some solutions, and I'm sure I was doing some good, but at the time it didn't really feel like it. It really felt like I was just making money. And I felt kind of empty about the way I was living my life, and I really just hated it. So I went out to LA with the purpose of obviously seeing a new part of the country and doing this job and getting out of New Jersey and kind of starting over and getting back in. I wanted to get back in shape too, because I was losing respect for myself at a rapid clip. I go to LA and I pick up tennis and I start playing tennis like 4, 5, 6 days a week. I'm losing a bunch of weight. I was starting to feel better, at least physically. I really didn't feel good about my mental state and what I was doing and how I was spending my time, and I was not happy. I tore my meniscus playing tennis, and I went into like a doctor's appointment ahead of the surgery that I was going to have, just like a simple scope. And during my initial like checkup to be cleared for anesthesia ahead of that, I was diagnosed with what's called bradycardia, which essentially is a fancy way of saying I have a super slow heart rate. I think it was in the low 40s at the time of my initial like doctor's appointment. It didn't end up being anything serious for like 6 weeks. And in that 6 weeks, I was going from doctor to doctor to doctor, and it wasn't necessarily presenting as this is okay. Maybe a third of the way through that 6 weeks, I started panicking, like, about health, because I thought it was a serious problem. And then I kept going to doctors and kept getting tests and kept not really getting concrete info about what was going on. Everything ended up being okay, and I ended up having the knee surgery and everything was fine. But in that 6 weeks, like, I started really taking a hard look at the way I was spending my time, because I thought I was in trouble health-wise. I honestly thought I was going to die. And prior to that, I wanted to die. And then during the 6 weeks, I realized I don't want to die. I'm unhappy with the way I've been spending my time and living my life. Started around then, and it was 2015 August when I had that surgery. And I came out of surgery and I just started living my life differently. By choice. I mean, self-educating. I hired my own coach at that point and started working on myself and my own journey. And it's been like 3 years of doing that now. And part of that was realizing after another 6 months maybe of that company that I didn't find enough meaning in that work for me to do that for long term. So I left LA in July of 2015, right at the end of June, and got out to Colorado.
So what's your vision for life mapping in the future for your own work with it?
Right. I had business cards printed recently for me and my business and life mapping, and I put on them world peace one map at a time. The idea behind life mapping is if we are telling ourselves a compelling story about our future, it's easier for us to kind of live into that future. And I alluded to this earlier with the whole visualization thing. If we're visualizing our ideal self and our ideal future, and we're identifying the challenges that we have that are keeping us from living in that future right now, and we're identifying the key tasks, which are 3 to 5 year kind of steps to get us in the direction of being that ideal self or that ideal future, living that ideal future. It gives you the ability to just live into it. And that's really what life mapping is putting those 4 things, ideal self, ideal future, challenges and tasks, identifying, the main ones within those, subgroups within those groups, and then putting them on this picture so that you have this identifying tool that you can use. The way we coach with this, with the actual maps, is a 6-week program. It's kind of structured. In week 1, we identify the center of our map, for instance. It's not necessarily the geographical center, but it's like the conceptual center of our map. Like, what is the center of this story and why?
Yeah.
And the idea is, if we use this as a tool to tell ourselves the story about the future, we'll be able to live into it easier, just because it's using that power of story, which is, it's really compelling. The second way that we use these maps is to connect with other people. So we can share them, show them to other people, tell them our story of our future and what we're working on and where we're headed. And we can essentially elicit feedback from those conversations, so we learn not only about ourselves and about our goals, but about the other people that we're talking to. They obviously learn about us on a much deeper level, because it's not just like a resume listing of things we've done in the past. It's what we're working on now. You end up kind of enrolling assistants in that journey. You explained to people kind of what you're working on, and I think people naturally want to help. And when you open and put yourself in that place of vulnerability and sharing what you're working on, people see that as like a thing that you're passionate about, and they want to help. The way life mapping works is actually really cool, and we want our goal for this is for everybody to make a life map, make their own life map, and you can only really make one of these. But the idea is we're doing introspective work with this life map, and we think if more people are doing that work, more people will be finding inner peace as a result, and then they'll be more peaceful on their external world as well, ultimately leading to world peace. But it starts with this introspective thought of, unless we're all good with the internal conflict, peaceful on that, we can't have peace on the outside of the world. And this tool, life mapping and coaching in general, whether it's with me or with somebody else, and whether it's with a life map or some other program that is introspective thought, like working on yourself, there's no way that we can have external peace if there's not internal peace. And there's no way that there can be internal peace unless there's a substantial amount of self-understanding and self-love present. And the only way that happens is if we're working on ourselves to the point, or questioning ourselves to the point where we get it. It's really easy to look at things outside of ourselves and go, that shouldn't be, or that shouldn't be, or that's wrong, or that. It's harder work to look in the mirror and go, I'm creating this in my life, I'm creating this in my life, I'm creating this in my life, and if I want to create something different in those areas of my life, then I need to be different somehow. It's conceptually, that's like awesome. Great, I'll just be different. How do I do that when I've been this way for 30 whatever years? On some level, all of the habits that we have in our lives, no matter how unhealthy they are, like now, and we know, they started somewhere with a positive intention. That can be as simple as somebody thinking that smoking eases stress, and then they get stress in their lives and they pick up smoking. I mean, that's a positive intention. The intention is to ease stress. That's positive. The guidance, the thought of smoking cigarettes obviously like easing that stress is flawed. But the thought is, I have stress and I'm going to ease my stress in my life. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a lot of different solutions to use for that problem or to ease that stress. There's a lot of different strategies you can use. Smoking just might have been the first one that a person thinks of because maybe their parents smoked to ease their stress. Identifying all these habits and then working them back to figure out what the positive intention is when they started, and then fast forwarding to now and realizing, okay, I've practiced it since then, so I'm really, really good at it. I'm really good at smoking because I practiced it for 20 years. And now is to decide, well, okay, now I'm 35 years old or however old the hypothetical person is in the situation, and you think to yourself, how is this really serving me now? Is it easing my stress to smoke? And what price am I paying if that's true? What are the prices that you're paying to ease your stress? You got the payoff of you're easing your stress, but you're paying a price. And with cigarettes, most people agree that it's with the physical health. So you're deciding, well, I'll ease my stress, but I'll kill myself at the same time. And if you lay it out that simply for somebody, they're like, well, that just doesn't make sense. Why am I doing that? You know what I mean? There's a lot of different ways that you can get the outcome of easing your stress without sacrificing your physical health. This whole life mapping process kind of stirs all of that up. I mean, since we're identifying who we want to be and the challenges we have, we're stating very clearly, I'm not that person right now because of this in my life. And as a coach, that's all I need to know. And that's what we're focused on.
Well, if there is anyone out here who would like to get involved, where can they go and find you? Obviously, with links, we'll put those in the description. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would suggest going to our website, which is lifemapping.me, and that you'll be able to see a little bit about what life mapping is. There's a little bit of bio on me and my partner, who's named Jim Brown, and he's the one who created life mapping and started the whole thing. I mentioned him earlier. There's something that you'll see on there if you're interested in making a life map that starts the entire process. It's called the Life Mapping Starter Package, and right now I think it's $99. And after the first 50 life maps we make in the U.S., we've made in between 10 and 15 right now. After we make 50 life maps, I think we're going to raise that price up. So that's a limited time offer of $99 on that Life Mapping Starter Package. And what that comes with is a proprietary workbook that we suggest you print out and do by hand. There's a lot of science on the different ways that learning happens when you actually sit down by hand with paper and write. So most of this process, life mapping, is old school. We ask you to print it out and use a pen or pencil and write. With the Life Mapping Starter Package, you get a workbook that you go through. I think it's 8 or 9 pages long, and takes about 45 minutes. But it identifies 3 key future attributes within the categories of ideal self, ideal future, challenges, and tasks. Those 4 that I mentioned. Those 4 categories and those 3 subtitles underneath each of those categories shows up on everybody's life map as the first base life map. That's like the basic life map. At the end of the workbook, there's a website. You type it in, and this is the maps. And you get to look at all of the life maps, and they're blank. They're just pictures of lands with, topographically, they're Earth-like in that they have mountains, lakes, and rivers and streams, but they're not in shapes like anything you've ever seen before. It's not like Brazil or America or, France. There's some are islands, some are peninsulas. They just look completely different. And the idea is we're using intuition for this part of the process. So we use our analytical mind for the workbook, and then we go to the website, and we're picking a picture that we like. And it's just find the picture that you like the best out of all the pictures that are there, and there's 20 of them. They're all completely different. And you pick your map that you dig, and you write down the letter that's associated with it, and you close the window. You take all of that information that you have now, which is 12 attributes and one letter identifying the map, and you enter that into a portal on our website that's also provided. And then Jim takes all that information and custom builds your life map in Australia. So he's going to take those words and that map, and he is going to place things on there in for a certain reason. As a coach, him and I have a conversation about it. I understand why he's put things certain places. He's been kind of teaching me how to read his maps as well. And then I coach this person through a 6-week development process. The base life map comes with a 30-minute phone call with a life mapping coach, which will be me or one of my other associates that I've trained. Actually, we're looking for we're a couple more coaches on the first too. So if anybody is interested and hears this and wants to reach out, please do via Facebook or the life mapping website. Just really anywhere, just reach out, get a hold of us, and I'll explain what the coaching side of it looks like, because it's a little bit different. So there's some sample maps on our website that you can check out and see what they look like. They're funky and they're cool, and there really is nothing like them out there, and it's a really cool process. I love it. I'm super excited that I'm fortunate enough to just be a part of it on the very ground floor of it coming to the United States, and it's fun. It's just fun to sit down with yourself and with a map and understand more about you and learn and foster that, or encourage growth of that self-understanding and self-love, because that it starts on the inside. And until we have that inner peace on an individual level, how can we be peaceful if internally we're in conflict? Externally, we're going to be in conflict too.
All right. Well, again, that was Tim Pahuta. Thank you again for coming on. I really enjoyed having you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. So this week's crazy sport is trampoline. Yes, it is a real Olympic sport. It is officially called trampoline gymnastics, and it made its Olympic debut in the 2000 Olympics. The sport was created by George Nesson and Larry Griswold in 1934. They were the inventors of the modern trampoline, and it was originally intended for astronaut training. It is scored in difficulty, execution, and the time of flight. Yes. Well, I think that personally, I have found my new sport. I think this is one that I could actually do. So, I'm going to go over here to our trampoline in the backyard and start preparing for the next Olympics. In the meantime, thanks for watching. This has been SEC FANatic. Thank you for watching/listening to the end. You are what makes this show worth it. Your host has been Matthew Johnson. Our guest has been Tim Pahuta. The song of the week, Drums and Percussion, royalty free. No copyright is held for any still pictures, motion graphics, or music. If you have improvements you would like to suggest, you can make them at any of our social media pages. Facebook, search SEC FANatic. Twitter @FANaticSEC. Or Instagram @SEC_FANatic. You can also contact us at secsportsfanatic@gmail.com. If you liked what you heard, there's more. You can listen on YouTube, Soundcloud, or iTunes. Links in the description. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your time. This has been SEC FANatic.